Hey guys, this is Johnny from Threcast. This is episode 2, and today we have a very special guest. He is my new friend, my new bestest buddy, the Sorcerer, who is a professional quail rancher, and and very very intelligent and interesting guy. So, I guess if you want to introduce yourself and give your version of the facts.
Okay, my account of the story. Yeah, I would say that I am like, if I were to define myself, I'd say that I'm like really anti-ideology, and I'm really against that. I think people should really think freely, but the thing is that that's something that only some people can do, and that's really unfortunate for us today. But I'd say I'm really anti-ideology, anti-religionism. I really like nature. I like to be outside. I do woodworking, like he said, quail ranching. I do lots of gardening. I'll be planting a lot of trees this year. Um, I'm pretty against civilization. I don't view it as like some mega evil thing, because there's good things about it that I like. But I like having nice hot showers and stuff. But you know, it's not ultimately. I view it as a negative thing. I think that we lived better before civilization, and basically before 5,000 years ago. That's like pretty ideal, I think.
I see. So you're big into like are you familiar with like Chad Hagg's channel and like Penny Linkula, obviously Ted
Yeah,
Kaczynski.
yeah, Linkola. I think he's kind of an odd guy. I don't really view his. I don't think anything that he proposes would actually be effective, and I also don't think anything that Kaczynski proposes would be effective. Like he has this like revolution thing where like people are, and that's not gonna happen. That's bullshit. But um, I think civilization is gonna end in one of two ways. It's either going to create conditions that are so bad that it can't sustain itself anymore, like Idiocracy. Like, if you ever seen that movie, I'm not a big movie guy, but that's like
I
one
keep
of the
getting
movies.
recommended it.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. There's there's a big issue with that, and that there's a lowering of intelligence, and eventually you're going to have the thing where it's like you have two engineers for like 2 billion 60 IQ people, and it just collapses from that. It's either going to do that, or it's going to run out of key resources, which I think is more likely. I think it run out of crude oil or copper or rare metals, things like that. But the thing is, before the last drop of oil ever comes out of the earth, the last resource is extracted, there's going to be some kind of economic disaster, and that's probably going to be what pushes it over. But in any event, there's going to be like a solar storm that just knocks out all the electrical equipment. There's something is going to
Mhm.
happen. A new disease will come and just kill everybody. But whatever happens, something is going to happen to end civilization as we think of it. I don't think
Yes.
civilization is ever going to totally go away, but it'll go away the way for how we imagine it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
and I don't.
oh, sorry.
I'm. Oh, sorry. You continue.
I was just gonna say, your first point where you're talking about how Linkola and Kaczynski's ideas are not really actionable. I had
Yeah.
a really funny thought, and I kind of realized that industrial society and its future is an inherently black manifesto because the only the only way that you could have a society like the one that Kaczynski or Lincoln envisions is by practicing mass dysgenics and trying to promote everything that is low IQ, that is
Mm.
you know um,
I think that's true.
just
I think that's
ignorant, right?
the,
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
because like white people are and their temperament is that of a speculator, right? They're these
Mm,
people that they're
yeah.
always trying to build things, invent things, occupy themselves, right? And so you can't really maintain a um, a pre-civilizational standard um, with people who are just naturally speculators, and they're always going to fuck you over, right? And so even if Lincoln imposed his, some sort of a green police or whatever, like
Yeah.
that green police would eventually get overthrown by whites. So you're gonna need like really stupid people. You'd have to like mass disincentivize high IQ births, and so I don't know. Like that's the only way
Yeah.
that you could possibly do it, and it's just so
Yeah.
silly at that point.
I agree. It's like what was it's like the first thing I described. It's like
Mm.
where you have two engineers for 2 billion 60 IQ people. Like they're basically trying to impose that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not desirable, and I don't think it could even happen anyway. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
desirable. If it happens via solar storms or by running out of resources, that is gonna breed towards high intelligence, I think, because who is gonna survive in a world where there's no electricity? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's gonna be people who planned for that and things like that. I think
Yeah.
it's not going to be just like random black people in the hood. I don't think they're going to make it through that.
No,
Um,
no.
so that's so like if it happens via nature, I think that that's a productive wild European thing where I think wild Europeans are very intelligent and
Mm-hmm.
obviously the domesticated Europeans are really stupid. Like the quote unquote liberals you see today, like they're just like not intelligent people. And that's
No,
like
no.
domestication. That's like it's like the same difference between a wolf and a chihuahua.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't really work out so well. So, but it's like those kinds of domesticated people, they couldn't survive just a total implosion of civilization. But
Mm-hmm.
they would do really well in like Kaczynski's or Linkola's Green Police kind of idea.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really against there's like dumb revolutions and like convert people like oh we have this it's like a crusade, it's like a Christian crusade, and it's like all right, like
Yeah.
fuck this is really dumb. I don't like this at all, and it's not feasible, it's not going to happen,
So
so I'm very against it.
would you consider yourself apolitical?
I'm basically apolitical. I'm not really a political person. I guess I follow politics to some degree, but only because it impacts my life.
I see.
It's not because I really care about it.
Mm-hmm. You probably like my friend Gomer. He has a similar attitude towards politics. Like
Hmm.
he's kind of like nationalist adjacent, but he's also like not really interested in politics.
Okay.
I talk a lot about Bill Gates, and Bill Gates not interested in politics either. He used to be
Yeah.
interested in like communism, and then he went to jail for it, and then he kind of
Yeah.
realized
That's
And then the
Yeah.
Soviet Union collapsed, and he kind of realized, oh well.
Yeah, it's really dumb. Yeah, communism is really Marxism is like one of the worst ideologies because, in my opinion, it's one of the worst ideologies just because it's like atheist Christianity. That's like how I would describe it. It's like all the morals of Christianity, like like the underdog and whatever.
Hmm.
All lives have value, like that kind of. There's like the Christian morals. They're
Hmm.
just taken straight out of the Bible, but they don't have God to justify it. Like the Christians are, I guess, internally consistent because at least they have like Yahweh to justify it,
Hmm.
but the Marxists don't. And so it's like they try to create like I guess quote unquote secular justifications for communism, and it's just dumb.
Yeah.
Like you can't really justify. It's like an indefensible position.
Hmm.
So I really dislike it. I like I said I dislike all ideologies really, but
Yeah.
um no.
You
There's
Oh, sorry.
one sorry yeah one note about ideologies. Not all ideas are ideologies. Like nationalism is not an ideology. That's not something you have to be taught. That's just like
Oh, I
normal.
see.
That's just what happens when you leave people alone and you don't like brainwash them. So I'm not against ideas or whatever. I'm just against like these stupid ideologies where they have this like book and you gotta like believe in the book. It's like
Yeah.
that's like brainwashing. Like you have to brainwash kids in order to have it succeed. Like that's really what I'm against. I'm not against anything like nationalism or whatever because that's just normal. Or
I see. I
I
see.
guess normal would be more like tribalism, but nationalism is just a kind of tribalism. I'm not against it in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of it
So
like that. I've always kind of,
mhm.
you're raised to think that like nationalism is another ideology, but
It's
it's really
really not.
it doesn't have to
Yeah,
be taught. It's just like
yeah, yeah.
it's like you just get mad when some immigrants move in like that.
Yeah, yeah, like that's just normal. That's just like if you ever go to like Thailand or something
Hmm.
and you just like see how these people are, you're just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I hate these guys. These
Yeah.
guys suck." Like I don't want to live near these guys. I can't
Hmm.
handle them. That's normal. That's just
Yeah.
like a normal reaction. So I'm not against any of that stuff. That's just like that's basically like what I call conservative brain, which is just anything that isn't ideology.
Yeah.
It's just like you see something yucky, like immigrants, and you're just like, I don't like this. I don't want to live near these people. I can't. I want to exile them or whatever.
Yeah.
That's normal. That's not ideology. So that's a big important distinction to make, I
Yeah.
think.
And you talk quite a bit about atheism. Like, how would you describe yourself spiritually? Because I know you're very interested in like a lot of folk traditions and like
Yeah,
those pipes you were showing. I thought those were really
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I would say. I would say that I'm an animist, but I don't really believe that atheism even exists per se. Besides being a technical thing that you don't believe in a
Yeah.
god, I guess it's some kind of technical definition, but I wouldn't even say that atheism is really a thing. I think atheism is kind of a reaction to Christians calling their god Yahweh. Or sorry, calling Yahweh God. And so you just look at it and say, "Oh, God doesn't exist." And so you call yourself an atheist because obviously Yahweh doesn't exist, and
Hmm.
anybody who's like has any modicum of intelligence or honesty will just admit that.
Hmm.
So so I would say that atheists are going to fall into one of two categories. They're either religious, like their ideas come from Christianity, they're kind of like Marxists or like
Yeah.
wokeists, liberals. Like that's a religious guy. That's just a religious atheist. But then there's also like you, who's basically just an animist who doesn't really care about animism. Animism is kind
Really?
of like I would say like Bill Gates' definition of exist. That's like a really animist proper. That's a really animist definition of exist, where you say that
Really?
it has form plus location.
Hmm.
The form is just spirit. Form means the same thing as spirit. Like that's not. Those are interchangeable words. So
I see.
I would say as long as if you have that kind of worldview where you believe in nature and materialism, that's like that's all just a kind of animism. And so I would just consider you, because you believe in spirits. but you just don't really care or think about it, I would just say that you're just an animist who doesn't really care about animism.
I would never have
So
thought of myself as an animist. That's very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, that's kind of how I view all atheists. They're either an animist or they're just a religious nutter. So
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think I kind of see what you're
yeah,
saying because, like,
yeah,
I mean, you look at paganism, like, you notice that like pagans and atheists get along pretty well.
yeah,
Like, I think that's just because paganism, it's just sort of this naive musing on the world,
yes,
and it's just sort of looking
yes,
at what you see in the world and just sort of imagining, like what's over the next mountain, right? Because most people would not
mhm,
have visited over the next mountain. Most people would be,
yeah, yeah.
and so they're not sure if like what shape the Earth is or what the stars are exactly, and so they just tell stories about it, and I think that's sort of
Oh, the Earth.
a
Sorry.
similar way of looking at things, I guess.
Yes, it's ultimately both materialistic, because it's both just saying that reality exists and that's all there is.
Yeah.
But so I don't even distinguish between the so-called pagan, which is but that's like a Christian word. They didn't ever call themselves pagan. That's like
Yeah, that's an
it's
epithet.
basically yeah, it's like a Christian attempt at naming them
Hmm.
because Christians basically want to believe that pagan is a religion, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
just it's just like normal people believing in the world.
We know the word
Um,
means the word means
rural, yeah, it's
rustic.
like
It's kind of
yeah, it's like a countryside guy.
it's kind of like it's kind of like in the same way that like it's kind of like saying like country bumpkin or like
Yeah, flyover state.
yeah,
Like
something
it's
like
like
that.
that. It's like that kind of thing. You can see it's like the exact same thing where like the city people, I think cities congregate a lot of religious people for some reason,
Yeah.
and they always are gonna their religion is always gonna be insulting towards um, like people who don't live in cities.
Hmm.
So, and that's because people who don't live in cities just don't accept the religion. Now, what another thing, by the way, is that the uh, the idea of like what is the shape of the Earth or something. It was always known in the past that the shape of the Earth is like an egg or a pregnant woman's stomach, basically. And it's basically real. I mean, it's not exactly
Yeah.
spherical. It is kind of like an egg, but that's how it would have always been described before, before we actually went to space and
Hmm.
saw it. Um,
Yeah, I'm
it would have been
aware.
known to be an egg shape.
I think though that there would have been more curiosity about it in the past though. Like I think that
Yes, yeah,
I know since the Greeks they already knew like the diameter of the Earth and everything.
yeah.
But
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
think there would have been a lot of like musing about it, like people that just like know nothing and they're just farming corn or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Well, not corn. Corn came from like
Oh,
South
wheat,
America, but
barley, yeah,
yeah,
back then. But yeah, it's just like I would say it's musings, but I would also say it's like it's like looking at a tree and imagining that the tree is kind of like a person,
yeah,
or
yeah,
it's kind of like you, and it's like has qualities like you,
yeah.
and that's kind of what it is. That's kind of what animism is. But it's just a recognition of forms. It's a recognition that you and the tree share forms. Like
Hmm.
you have a lot of things in common, and also the tree. The tree has a lot of things in common with like a placenta.
Yeah.
It's like physically looks similar and it does kind of the same stuff.
Hmm.
Or like if you look at like any god, I mean, I could just sit here and like talk for hours about any specific god. God is the same as spirit.
Yeah.
Um, I could just talk for hours about like forms for it,
Hmm.
or like you have like Pan, who lives in the forests, but he also lives in the crowd. It's like that's the chaos. That's the chaos god. And chaos is like natural order. This is like what happens when you leave things alone, is you get chaos.
Hmm.
Like a sea is chaotic, or like a forest. Like look at the placement of trees in a forest. That's like chaotic.
Yeah.
And you see like the name Pan means everything.
Hmm.
And that's because everything is there's really no such thing as like order versus chaos. It's just degrees of chaos. Because even if you try to take all the trees and order them in a row, like you make a field of trees,
Hmm.
that's uh That's still chaotic. It's
Mhm.
just less chaotic,
Well,
you know?
I think Gady
So,
would say that entropy or disorder, chaos, all that
mhm.
stuff. I think he would say that that is actually just a matter of opinion. So
Okay.
if you look at say like an abstract painting, right? You look at a
Mhm.
Dolly painting or whatever. Well, not Dolly, a Pollock, right?
Mhm.
Is that organized or is it disorganized? Or you look at Tracy Emin's bed. If you've ever seen that installation,
I have not
it's
not
basically
seen that.
this feminist bitch. She took her
Okay.
dirty bed and she like cut out
Yeah.
the carpet and everything, like cut the whole like bedroom out and like put it in a museum.
Okay.
So like her
I see it. I
disgusting
see it.
her disgusting
I
bed.
see it.
And you look at that and you go, well, is that organized or
Hmm.
is that disorganized? And so it's really
Okay.
I guess it's really just how you feel about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, the way that it would have been thought of in the past is that is definitely chaotic.
I see.
And the reason it's chaotic, I guess like what even is chaos? Chaos is just I think it's just what happens when you leave things alone.
Mhm.
Like you don't try to do something with it. That's kind of chaos. Like you look at like how people walk around in a crowd. That's like chaos because there's not really an attempt. But like what even is an attempt? It's is this like because there's still subconscious attempts and that's what creates the crowd moving in the way it does.
Mhm.
So it's kind of undefinable, I guess. You just kind of know it when you see it, but that's yeah, I guess it could be a matter of opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you had interesting things to say about autism that I wanted
Ah,
to talk about.
yes. Yeah, this is something I think is really important for autistic people like us to think about is that autism is normal. That's like I think all the Europeans in the past, probably before 10,000 years ago, I don't think there was a single person who wasn't autistic in Europe.
Really?
And it was an entirely autistic continent. And it makes sense because all autistic people are European, or they're mixed with Europeans. Like rarely you'll see like some hybrids, like mulattoes or something. Some of them will be autistic, but and some Asians who are mixed with Europeans, like Chinese or something. Some of them can be autistic,
Hmm.
but really it's a European thing. It's like really that's a European thing to
Wait,
be
so
autistic.
there's been studies showing that like have there been studies showing this that it's pretty much all European? Because I do know one
Yeah.
girl. Her name is Haynes is on. She's on Discord, and she's like
Mhm.
Colombian, and she's like one of these high functioning autistic people. Um,
Well, the thing is that she's probably a
yeah,
lot
probably
mixed with
mixed. Yeah,
Europeans. She's
probably mixed.
mostly European, most likely. But like you look at like a pure black African or something, there's no autism in there.
Oh,
It's no
okay.
chance.
I see.
That's something where it just doesn't happen. But it's really autism is basically just the wild European neurotype, and it makes a lot of sense because you look at it. Like what is autism? Autism is basically you'd say it's high intelligence. That's a really important thing. It's also really high attention to details, and it's also high sensitivity.
Hmm.
And you can see how a lot of those things. I guess high sensitivity is just a kind of high attention to detail, but it's that's really what characterizes autism. And those things all make a lot of sense in prehistoric Europe.
Hmm.
Being really sensitive to loud noises
Yeah.
or like that's obviously that obviously could benefit you a lot or like being very interested in like gathering things and collecting them and organizing them.
Yes.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you need those things in the winter,
Hmm.
if you're when you're going to die without those in the winter.
Oh, I see.
So if you need to organize everything and gather them and store them somewhere in like a really really organized way,
Hmm.
that could make a lot of sense in the past.
Yeah.
And so these are things that like make a lot of sense if you're like a caveman and you live in the Stone Age, but it doesn't really make so much sense today. If you live in the civilized world, you don't really need those things because you can just go to the grocery store every day and get food, and you don't. And this, so it domesticates people, but the undomesticated people are the autists.
Mhm.
And so, if you are diagnosed with autism, you should be proud of that. It's
Yeah.
something you should be really, because I think that makes you like, um, I don't really believe that there's such a thing as like a superior gene or something, but this is like makes you better than other people in the wild world.
Yeah.
In the civilized world, you're not going to perform so well, but in nature, you're going
Oh,
to
I
perform
see.
really,
I
really well.
see.
So it makes you, if you're living in nature, you're definitely better than people who aren't autistic.
See. When?
So,
How did you come up with this idea? What was it that what was your aha
hmm.
moment?
I think it's that it wasn't really one thing. I think it's really that I went and I looked at all these autistic people who are probably about 5% of the population today. That's like my estimation. Maybe like 5% of Europeans are autistic. But you look at all of them and you see trends. You see trends in behavior, where it's like there's usually a pretty strong desire for certain things, like you want to live outside or something, or you really like animals or something.
Yeah.
And I just noticed this, and you notice like, oh, this guy just like wants to know like every bird outside. He wants to know like everything about every single bird outside.
Yeah, that's
But
me. I
yeah,
when I was a kid,
yeah, that's kind of how I
it
am.
was just a new topic every month. I would just become obsessed
Yeah,
with Australia for some reason and didgeridoo music when I was a elementary school kid, or like
yeah,
yeah, or I'd be taxidermy, or it would be um fucking like occult manuscripts from like very specific types of manuscripts, occult manuscripts from like the 1500s. Um,
yeah,
and I would just collect all these things, and I wouldn't stop. Or it'd be pinstriping, or it would be fucking I don't know, all kinds of really weird shit that like normal people would just look at, and they'd be like, "Why do you care so much?" Stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I have got to go now because my grandma is here actually. So if you wanted to continue this
Yeah, we'll
later,
record part two, I guess, and just
you-
stitch it
okay.
together. All right, we came back from a break, and we were just talking about autism, and let's just pick back up. I was talking about stuff that I would have like monthly obsessions with. And you
Hmm.
were talking about how like collecting was like a
A
big thing.
wild trait. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
wild trait.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it's yeah, I've had a lot of interests like that in my life. Probably not as many as you have. I think you listed a lot, and I don't know if I've had
oh, it's
that
a
much of an
lot.
interest. What's a lot? I don't know. I guess a lot more than me. Whatever mine is. I think for me, I had a really big interest in languages, and that was something for me. I really, really liked languages and linguistics, and
Hmm.
I've actually come up with a number of novel theories about language that, to my
Really?
knowledge, nobody else has come up with, about phoneme formation. So I think that's something I think if you do like a lot of study into one topic,
Hmm.
you can very quickly become the most knowledgeable like in the world. You can know literally everything about it. You can
Hmm.
read if you just read like everything that everyone has to say about it, do your own kind of researching, your own thinking. You can easily know more than anybody else. Or you can be at the top 1% of linguists easily, or whatever topic. If you want to
Hmm.
be like really knowledgeable about like insulin production or something, then you could be like really really knowledgeable about anything. And I think what happens is that in the past, where are you getting knowledge from? I think it's just kind of people around you.
Hmm.
And how much do they know? They know a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff to know, like about plants and different kinds of tools you can make and how to make them, and in the environment that we evolved in, there's a lot of stuff to learn,
Yes.
and I think that that's what that is. But because we have the internet, we are using that as kind of like a surrogate parent, and we're learning from the
Oh,
internet, and we're just picking so it's kind of random because the internet is just infinite information, and so you'll just pick up everything. You'll just learn like a bunch of random stuff. But in the past, I think you would be very interested in learning about just everything that there is to know, which is you want to know everything about the plants, the animals, when
yes.
do they come out, tool making, things like that. There's a lot to learn about that.
Hmm.
So I think that's what's going on with that.
Now, would you consider yourself like your obsessions? Would you consider yourself like do you do like deep study, or do you like have like more of an eclectic kind of study? Like are you methodical in the way that you study? Do you make sure that you
Mm.
read everything relevant to the topic in
Uh,
sort of a professional way, or do you kind of just go wherever you're interested?
I think I just kind of go, yeah, whatever it feels like. I never really thought about doing anything formally or, going to school to learn something, anything like that. I've
Yeah, I
never really
know.
thought about that. I just kind of think like, there's some kind of topic out there and I just want to know like everything about it. I want to know like I want to know everything there is to know about like 1600s firearm manufacturing, something
Yes.
like that. That's the kind of thing you just like know everything about it. And I think once I know a sufficient amount where I can talk about it and I can like really explain it to somebody who doesn't know anything about it,
Hmm.
then I'll be pretty content with that, and I might move on to something else.
I see. Yeah, I mean, I've always been like very sporadic and eclectic. I
Mm.
just anything that interests me. I mean, I'm the whole world to me is just sort of like a school. Like
Yeah.
I'm always, and not just like when I'm on the internet, but I'm always like paying very close attention to everything. And
Mm.
this is something that I didn't really do as much when I was younger, but now I do it all the time. And I try to look for patterns in everything. Um, and I try to like learn lessons from things. Um,
Mm.
if you try to commit yourself to learn something new every day, you'll really start to pick up some wild ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like you'll know that you really know about something when you start sounding crazy to normies.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's that but yeah, you'll definitely get some wild ideas.
yeah.
That's for sure.
When you're one step ahead of everyone, you sound smart. But when you're
Yeah.
two steps ahead of everyone, you sound crazy.
Yeah, there's a quote something to though if like imagine you're seeing like a ballroom full of people dancing, but you couldn't hear the music, you'd think that they're crazy.
Hmm.
But they're not crazy. They can just hear the music and you can't. That's kind of what
Yeah.
it is. I think that's kind of what's going on
Hmm. Hmm.
with autism, is that we can hear the music. We know what's going on, but if you're not, then you kind of seem crazy to everyone else. But
Yeah.
they're the crazy people. They're the ones who can't see reality. So,
I released a short video the other day. It was about modern art,
mm,
and somebody had
okay.
asked me to make a video explaining the appeal of modern art, and I basically argued that it's just autism. That it's just
Mm,
when you get past the degenerate stuff, when you get past the stuff that is degenerate subject matter, and you just look at abstract art, it's just
mhm,
like it's people that have these very narrow fixations, and they're trying to
mm,
communicate them, and it's like I used to hate modern art so much, but I think when I understood this, I actually felt really bad because it's just like nobody cares. It's like nobody likes it. Nobody
yeah,
cares. I
yeah.
mean, I guess I shouldn't feel bad because they're kind of fleecing people with the amount of money they're charging.
Oh
But
yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, it's
That's
like
that's like
yeah,
insane that they'll charge $15,000 for like a can of spaghetti.
yeah, yeah.
You know? But, Yeah,
I
it's
think that's
crazy.
obviously like I think like the
That's not
found
really
object
autism.
stuff is.
Yeah.
I think you know what the found object thing is? I think that's like
Mm-mm.
that goes beyond just being an abstract artist. That's like you're just a Potemkin narcissist, and you just want to get in. You know, you want to get your place in the history of some scene. The I know that it's more complicated with Marcel Duchamp because Marcel Duchamp, he just considered it just like some joke, and he didn't really give a shit.
Uh-huh.
Like nobody saw it in his studio. Like nobody, it was in his studio, and like nobody really cared or looked at it. But it was like it was hyped up to be this big thing.
Yeah. I think art is a really interesting thing. I don't even know how I would define art. What even is art? Is it like is photography art? I mean, I don't really think I don't consider that kind of stuff art. I think art must be some kind of it's going through your brain.
Hmm.
A photograph isn't really art. So I think what makes art interesting is that you're seeing the world through someone else's eyes.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting if it's through your own eyes. If you see someone make art and they have eyes like you, and they're going to make art, kind of like how you would or in a way that appeals to you, that's really interesting when you
Hmm.
see that, if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience of like a few times, but it's very rare
Mm,
because I have a hard time relating to people,
mm,
and so like when I relate to people, it's very overwhelming. Um,
mm,
but I don't know what art is, but like I haven't come up with a definition. If we're talking about the
mm.
object art, you cannot define that because you cannot define an object in physics. Like you cannot define a tree in physics because
Yeah,
you
you
know
just show it.
you can't come up with enough criteria because it's like, oh, are you
Yeah.
talking about leaves or needles? Are you talking about
Mm,
a sapling, or are you talking about something that's kind of in between a sapling and a tree?
yeah.
So you point to objects in physics, but if we're talking about art as a concept, I have no idea what that would be because we would define that, but
Mhm,
I don't know what that would be. I know how art works though, um,
mm,
and it's a process I call completion. Basically, art manipulates this process. The idea of completion is just that it's just a very simple idea that when we're presented with information that's ambiguous, um, our brain fills in the blank, so to speak, with a series of physical interpretations. So if you look at like a Dali painting, you're not just looking at what's inside the canvas. You're not just looking at the clocks, but you're also trying to interpret what's outside the canvas,
mm,
and you're trying to make sense of it, so to speak. And so you take those images that you're already looking at, and you create new images based on that, on what's actually available. So uh, you have a bunch of images flashing that are similar to that one, and
okay.
because each image will be wired to a particular set of chemicals and nerve impulses. Um, it'll sort of create basically an imaginative high, right? And that's sort of how it works. And so, if you want to create great art, well, the um, it's all you have to do is just manipulate that process, and you want to tease out um, that effect by introducing ambiguity and contrasting that with something that has like strong intention to it, or strong sense of intention. So, like for example, using limited color palettes is a good way of um, creating a sense of intention, right? If you just like
Mm,
use red, yellow, and blue as opposed to using all the colors, right? It kind of creates a
mm.
sense of intention. I have trouble. I don't know how to define intention, but I know it when I see it.
You know what? I don't know. I was thinking maybe I got a definition of art, but I don't think so. But I'll have to think about that later. That's an interesting idea. It's something I think art might be something that you're like constantly doing in some way. Um,
Yeah,
it might just be just like living as art. I'm not really sure.
I mean, I guess like you're constantly manipulating that process if you have, especially if you have a very imaginative
Mm.
mind, because
Mm.
you can imagine objects that aren't there. Like you can, like what you were talking about with the tree.
Mm.
You can imagine like sort of human characteristics on the tree, and that sort of creates that contrast between ambiguity and intention, and so you get
Okay.
all these vivid images. So you imagine one vivid image, it gives you more. Um,
Okay.
but I mean, the mind is really complicated, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't even have the real the right tool set for it. But now that we have rational science, maybe we can. Maybe it's possible to do that. That's what I've been trying to do. But
Yeah, I think psychology is such a complicated thing. It's really just guessing, and it's like a bunch of axioms, and you just like propose an idea, and if it fits, you just kind of use it.
mhm.
But it's a really hard subject, but it is an important one. I think it's something I think about a lot. Um, Thinking about different neurotypes and how they behave in the world.
Mhm.
I think that's something that's really important to understand. And also like kind of an aside, but understanding the physiognomy of those neurotypes too. You can usually tell how someone's brain works just by looking at their face.
Oh yeah,
Uh, yeah, it's pretty obvious. Like people who don't believe in physiognomy are like
they have a
crazy to me.
physiognomy to them.
They have a physiognomy that you can tell.
You can just tell by the
Yeah.
physiognomy.
You can tell, yeah. So it's a really yeah, it's really interesting. It's an interesting display of genetics that the body is it's like every single piece of it is interconnected, and so it's kind of like when you see a broken window on a house, you know that that's not the only problem with the house.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, I think. You see like a broken person, you see the broken face, like domesticated.
Oh
You know that's not
yeah.
the only problem. You know,
Yeah.
it's something inside too.
I remember we were talking about physiognomies, and I was talking about there's like this eerie libertarian physiognomy. It's not even
Yeah, like a
liberal.
really skinny.
It's like
Like the face is like skinny.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's like
and it's really weird looking.
it's not like a liberal physiognomy. It's like specifically libertarian or like free speech kind of person. Like they might be
Mm,
like mixed race or something. They're usually white, but it's like usually skinny
yeah,
and like kind of masculine, but like not enough. Like like where
yeah,
you're
yeah.
like about as masculine as like a fish. like like
Yeah.
if we could call a fish masculine, like that's how
It's
masculine they
yeah,
are.
man.
Where it's like
It's really weird
like you
looking
can imagine
also.
some girl looks at him like he's handsome, kind of.
Yeah, he's like vaguely human,
yeah,
vaguely masculine, vaguely masculine.
yeah.
You can tell it's a guy, but
They're like the
you know.
they're like the vaporwave version of people.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. They are. I think is interesting. I think that like that face is. I think you're right that that does attribute itself to like lolberts, but I think that lolberts, the the really hardcore people who believe in like the economics, religion, and you know the kind of not some boomer who just is like, oh, my guns or something, but I mean like you know what kind of
Mises
libertarian I'm talking
people.
about. Yeah, those kinds of guys. I think those people are genetically the same as the wokeists and like the communists and the Christians,
Mhm.
but they all look a little different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I wonder if it's that like they join the cult, and because the cult gives them certain practices, that causes them to like look different. Like epigenetically, like they'll look a little different.
What you mean? So like
I don't know if that's
you
real.
mean like changing their facial appearance, or like you mean changing their
Yeah.
biological appearance? Like
Yeah, I think it changes like the whole body, but
Like by
not
having,
like radically, but
but like in a subtle way, like by having
it's
these
a very subtle.
ideas.
Yeah, yeah, for like here's an example of that. If you joined the vegan cult, you wouldn't eat meat, and then that would cause you to look different because you
Yeah,
don't eat meat.
but you
It's
have
like
like the
so
sunken
that's like an
eyes and
example,
the.
but yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know exactly what they're doing different. Like, what are libertarians doing differently than like fire and brimstone Christians? I don't know, but I think they're doing something different because I think they're genetically the same,
Something
but
interesting I
yeah.
noticed on a it was a graph showing fertility rate by political views or whatever, and it
Mm,
showed that now it actually broke it down by leftists and liberals as well. So like you
okay.
had far right, you had leftists, and you had liberals. The leftists actually had a higher fertility rate than like extreme liberals. And one thing
Okay.
I've noticed about communists is that they're slightly more masculine than like they're still like soy boys like Caleb Maupin,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
like Caleb
Yeah.
Maupin is like I would say he's definitely more masculine than like like your average libertarian, for example. Like or you look at like someone like
I,
Haas, or you look at someone like Leftism Today, or
mhm.
um any of these other like communist commentators. Like they have like a slight like they have a slight their own slightly different look to them, I guess. um
I think that is because communism was made for like peasants,
mhm.
basically. And because I think a religion, there's never enough religious people to actually like solely rely on religious people for the religion to succeed. So they have to piggyback off like an ethnicity or
Yeah,
like a class or something. And so the communists piggybacked off the peasants, and the peasants are, they're just kind of like they're like autistic people who don't have autism. If that's like, it's like the same person who doesn't, but they don't have autism.
mhm.
It's just kind of a weird thing to say, but they have everything else. They kind of look the same. They look a little different, but they look pretty much the same, and they have a conservative mindset like the autists, but they're just not really intelligent. They're not.
I
They
see.
don't have the attention to detail. They don't have the same kind of interests, but they're conservative and they have either they're somewhat wild. They're more wild than the religious people, and I think it piggybacked off them, and it made the religious people kind of try to copy them,
I see. I see.
and so I think that's what happened. But you see like um what's another example? Like the wokeists, well, that's kind of weird because they tried to piggyback off black people and it didn't work. It was like total failure. Like none of them accepted it. So I don't know what ended up. Who do they even copy? I don't know if they copy anybody. And so they might be a more pure expression of, because they don't really copy black people, because that's a sin to them.
Hmm.
If you like that, that would be like heresy, blackface, whatever.
Yeah,
So I don't think they really copy the ethnicity that they tried to piggyback off of. So they might be a more pure example of cultism than communists are.
I see.
So the communists might, because of their specific, cult flavor, being one that tries to attach itself to peasants, might make them more normal looking and probably more normal acting.
I see. I
But
mean, like,
uh,
yeah.
but they're still
I mean,
weird.
if you listen to
So
Caleb's message, like, he's trying to like, make he's trying to make socialism like conservative and like
mhm.
Christian,
He's trying to
like
yeah.
he's also interested in like reparations, and he's also like interested in getting spanked, and like yeah,
Okay.
if you're familiar with that drama.
I don't know. No, I don't know
he's
who that
uh
was.
he's the leader of an organization called CPI. Basically, imagine like right wing
Oh, great.
communism, or like
Okay.
like
Yeah.
communists who are like kind of conservative and want to appeal to the white working class, kind of, but
Yeah. That's
not
it.
like call them
Yeah.
white, and be like for reparations and anti racism, kind of. Um,
Yeah,
basically, what
that's
happened
just that they're just piggybacking off conservatives.
basically what
They're
happened
trying to.
was it came out that like well, according to some people, like he was like really manipulative, and he would like rope people into conversations where he would talk about how he likes to get spanked and how his wife gets him to see a dominatrix.
I
and
see. I see. I see.
and guess what? He actually admitted it was
Yeah.
true. Like some of it was true.
Oh,
Like the
great.
that and he was talking about how we need to end corporal punishment and stuff.
Oh my God. That's yeah, it's just like um oh you know what? That kind of reminds me. I don't know how big of a guy he was about like traditional gender roles or whatever. I
Kind
don't
of,
know.
I guess,
Uh,
like kind
But
of.
probably not a bit. He's probably not that. It doesn't sound like he was expressing too much interest in it
Yeah.
publicly, but
Privately, no.
um or privately. But you'll notice that like religious people, especially like the really religious ones, like the kinds that will like cut off their penis for the for the religion, like those kinds of guys,
Hmm.
um, they profess like these really extreme morals, and they never act on it. Or they'll be
Yes.
like they'll be like a pastor, and he's like, oh, homosexuality is bad, and then they'll be gay.
Yeah.
You know, they'll be caught
Just
like
do the
with gay
exact
prostitutes.
opposite.
Yeah, yeah. Or let's do like here's another example. Like Hassan, I'm sure you know who that
Yeah.
is. Hassan Abi, and he's like, oh, communism, and then lives in like multi-million dollar
Yeah.
house. So it's like, I think what happened. This is my hypothesis about this. I think what happened is that the evolutionary pressure to follow a moral is different than the evolutionary pressure to express a moral, where you like talk about having the moral. And like you can imagine in a world where you benefit from saying that you're a Christian,
Hmm.
like in the 1400s in like France or something, you benefit from saying you're a Christian, but you wouldn't actually benefit from being a Christian. You would join the clergy and like cut your balls
Yeah.
off. So I think what happened is the cults created an evolutionary pressure to express like these extreme morals, but not actually ever follow them, and they like do the exact
Yeah. Yeah.
opposite. But
Or it could be
that's an interesting thing I
it could be
noticed.
the classic projection. Like I know like projection is way
Mm,
overused, but I do notice that
yeah.
I do it. Like I project on people. And and you know what it is? It's just like all projection means is that like you're like say like you're gay, like you're a gay priest, and
Mm,
you'll be the whole time you'll be fighting to like overcome your gayness, and so you'll be obsessed with like being gay, and so you'll be like
mhm,
um like constantly talking about it, and like it's just sort of a way to like relieve
mm,
yourself. And that's something you see with like you saw with like Caleb Maupin is that he would tweet like before
mm.
all that stuff came out, he would tweet about spanking and stuff like
Oh my gosh.
and I know of well, I shouldn't talk about that, but what was it like? Yeah, so projections, like I know it's like gets written off a lot because it's just so overused. It's like, oh, well, you're projecting,
Mm,
but I mean, it is. I do think it is something people do, and for a variety of reasons.
okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Um, it could be, well, here's the reason why I think it's not that, although it could be, is because like conservative brained people, they don't really talk about like extreme morals. Like they don't really think about it or talk about it. They just kind of like it's kind of just an
Oh, I see.
unspoken thing.
So they don't really like,
And you don't really see it that
yeah,
much. You don't see like these extreme moral claims like that you see from the religious nutters. But you really see it a lot from the cult people. They like, especially like the really extreme
hmm
ones. They will make really extreme claims and they never follow
yeah,
them.
yeah.
But you really just don't see it that much from conservatives.
Yeah, they do.
So,
I mean, I think about my parents, and my parents are not like crazy like that. And but I know of
mm,
another family that they're very religious, and they're always talking about their religion. And their
mm,
son's like a psychopath, and they have
yeah,
this kind of
yeah.
dysfunctional family, and they're good people, but it's like, um, like it's like what you're saying.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. But that was an interesting idea, I thought. I'm not sure if that's true, but it sounds true that maybe that's why they do that.
Mhm.
But whenever I see like extreme moral claims, I know to watch out. That's something to really watch out for. If you see some guy really making these crazy claims and really extreme, he's like really, really into it, that's probably a person who doesn't actually believe in those things.
Yeah, like if you're familiar with like Nick Fuentes and all that, or you're just familiar
Oh
with
yeah, he's a perfect example of that.
I
Yeah.
mean, and here's another thing too is that I made a video. I called it the agnostic right, and the idea of the video
Hmm.
was that uh, I just see so many e-Catholics who it's not that they're just like being human. Like it's not just that
Hmm.
they're just like being dumb and not living up to their morals. It's like they are aggressive. It's almost like aggressively doing the exact opposite of what they're preaching. Like just
Yeah,
being completely nasty to other people who don't deserve it for no reason other than
yeah,
they're mildly
exactly.
inconvenienced. And like in the next tweet, they're talking about their god. They're talking about this or that. So what I was arguing
Hmm.
was that maybe a lot of these people are not Christians. I mean, it's very easy to just say, "Oh, Christian, look at these dumb Christians," but maybe they're not Christians. Maybe they are agnostics who are into Christianity for the wrong reasons, and so they have this sort of weird in
Mm.
between thing where because I mean you're familiar with NRX, right? You're familiar with that crowd.
Redirects? I don't think so. No.
Oh well, but you are familiar with like like sort of like monarchist or like traditionalist.
Yeah, I know that. I know the Catholic monarchist people. That's what
Yeah,
you're
and they
talking
have
about?
this very shrewd. They have
Yeah.
this very shrewd atheistic worldview, and then they sometimes they mention their Christianity. It's so weird. It always throws me for a
Mm.
loop, where you have somebody that's talking about dysgenics and divergent evolution in humans with such subtlety, and then in the next breath they're talking about that they're also Catholic, or they just sort of mention it. They just sort of they don't really talk about the
Yeah.
theology or anything, but they'll say like you know uh basically the kind of conversation we're having now about like facial structure and physiognomy. They will have that
Hmm.
same conversation, and then they'll also say that they're Catholics, and then they'll also be like shitty to someone on Twitter, right? Um,
Hmm.
so I think a lot of these people are just agnostics, and they just don't know where to go because it's like what are their alternatives? Their alternatives are paganism, and the image of paganism is something that's just like really gay and just like really like you dress up in a
Hmm.
costume and you have gay sex and you wear tattoos and you're a consumer. And then there's atheism, which is kind of like the same thing.
They kind of think it's the same thing. Yeah, they think it's the same thing.
So
Yeah. I think here's what's going on. I think that there are two groups of those e-Catholics. There's one that are religious maniacs that I think are kind of the same thing I just described as like they profess these extreme morals, but they don't want to follow any
mhm.
of them. And then the other group, which I don't know the ratios because I don't really interact with these people, but there's a certain amount of these guys are just conservatives who got really conned hard into religion.
I see.
And those guys aren't really religious, but they got conned into it and they got tricked into thinking that Christianity is like traditional or something. And
Yeah,
it's like the polar opposite of traditional. and it's like claiming like communism is traditional or something. Like, no, it's not. Like this is an invader
Hmm.
religion. This didn't come from here. This is like claiming that that's traditional is just like spitting on all of Europe before that,
Hmm.
before Catholicism was made. So yeah, so I think what happened is that lesser intelligence conservatives, but also some high intelligence conservatives will get conned into religions.
Hmm.
Um, and so you'll see like a lot of peasants, they'll like call themselves Christian, but like they don't even know who wrote the
Yeah.
Gospels. It's like those kinds of people. Like that's not a real religious person. They're just like they just got conned into it because they think it's traditional. Basically, like I said, conservative brain is just you like normal things and you want to get rid of yucky things. And basically, your conservative brain would normally look at like Catholicism and think it's really yucky, but they got tricked into thinking it's
Hmm.
normal. So I think that's what went on. So I don't know how many of these e-Catholics are actually just conservatives, but a large amount of them are religious people. I can
Yeah.
tell. It's definitely a religious because they don't really talk rationally a lot of the time,
Hmm.
but some of them do, and those people who do talk rationally and scientifically, those are really conservatives. Those aren't really those aren't real Catholics for the most
Yeah.
part.
I mean, to be fair, I find also that the more scientifically minded people are also irrational, and they're also
Mm. Oh yeah, they can believe super irrational
and
things,
it,
but
yeah,
but they want to be grounded in reality. Like they actually have a desire to.
yeah, yeah.
Even though they could be wrong or they could be approaching things in a crazy way, they want to approach things in the right
Hmm.
way. But the cult people don't. Like they don't really care. Like they will never say like, "Oh, you're wrong." They'll just say like, "Oh, you're racist"
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something, or "Oh, you're a heretic."
You're
That
evil.
like they don't really care about wrong and right, or yeah, they just say, "Oh, you're evil. You didn't follow the cult the right way," because they're not interested in that. And so even if you are kind of an irrational guy or you believe things that are irrational, at least you want to have the right approach to
Hmm.
truth. That like you actually should care about that instead of just whatever the book
Yeah.
says.
The only difficulty though is that um, from a Gadian point of view, truth is just a feeling of confidence, and so like what'll happen is that there will be some methods um, that will just like happen to replicate results, and so
Hmm.
people will have like a genetic inclination towards those kinds of methods, and so
Hmm.
at the end of the day, they're just assumptions, and they're completely subjective. Um, but people will be wired to have different like methods to I guess like predicting, and that's sort of how truth works. So truth is just you have feelings, and the feelings come from genetics, and if they happen to work, they work. So
Hmm.
so there's nothing like it's not like someone. It's not like there's someone out there like keeping score and says this is true, right? Or like
Yeah.
I know some people they'll try to say like, well, 2 + 2 = 4, right, or something like that. No, that's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
no, that's math, and that's a little abstract, but um, that's rational. That's not um, it has nothing to do with truth or falsehood. That's something completely different.
Hmm.
Rationality is just like um, it just means that like you're able to visualize an explanation, and you have all your key terms defined, and you don't make a contradictory um, conclusion, for example. Um,
Okay.
so like research and like experiments and whether God exists or doesn't exist, that's not science. That's your personal religion. And so that's why we consider atheism to be a religion, because it's just about assumptions. Um, Now that doesn't mean you can't be religious. right? There's nothing wrong with having a
Mhm.
religion. After all, I mean these genes are telling us to do something, right? And they could
Mhm.
land cause you to go into a manhole, or they could find you a mate. So it's okay to follow
Mhm.
your instincts.
Yeah, the way that I would approach it, this is just I've never really seen a lot of Gade, so I don't know if I don't. I'm sure it sounds true. Like from what I've seen of it, it sounds true. The way that I would approach truth is I'd say that truth is just a real thing that's out there, and it's objective, and we can have subjective feelings about it,
Hmm.
but it doesn't matter what our feelings are because our feelings are not real per se. Those are basically
Hmm.
opinions, and and an opinion that is the same as the truth is a fact. So that's what I would say. If you have an opinion, you're
I
wrong.
see.
All opinions are wrong, besides preferential opinions, like you prefer ice cream or something. That's a little different. But when I say opinion, I mean, is this a man or a
Hmm.
woman? And you can have your opinions on that, but there's a truth to that, and there's a correct fact that you can say about it.
Hmm.
And if you were correct, then you'd have a fact. If you're incorrect, you have an opinion. So that's kind of that's how I would approach
Hmm.
things. Um, so I think that's probably what you're saying, just using different words.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that sound like that's what you're
Well, I
saying?
mean, like if I were to see, say, a frog jump in front of me,
Mm,
and if I were to
mm,
say that's a fact that that frog jumped in front of me, well, that's just
mm,
because I have a feeling of confidence about it, right? I could like
mm,
I remember there's this my neighbor has a mushroom in his yard,
mm,
this big mushroom, and I walked by it, and I suddenly realized that it was made of stone. It was painted, right? So
mm.
just because you see something, right? Just because I mean, there's people with schizophrenia, right? There's people that there's moments
Yes.
of your day where you're dreaming. So you have this
We
there's
hallucinate.
this
Yeah.
object that appears on the screen, this shape. And that's
Hmm.
all. There's just an object, and then there's how you feel about it, and that's all there is. That's how we look at it. And so um, we don't have we don't have God's eyes, so we can't you know quote unquote see where everything is, I guess, or track where all these objects are going. But
Hmm.
like there isn't like I think when you say that there's like truth out there, you're kind of implying that there's like some sort of authority that's like designating these things, I guess. Um, and I think it's just you see. I think how it works is you just see shapes, and then you have
Hmm.
chemical responses to those, and then the ones that work just happen to work, and it's all at the end of the day. It's just a feeling.
Well, you can say that there's all that we have is a feeling. That's true. But that doesn't mean that there, like we're having a feeling about a thing, and that thing exists beyond
Mhm.
us. And so that's it. That's what I
I
would
guess
say
I just
about that.
don't.
I would say that
I guess I just don't know what else to say.
we can only have
I
feelings.
guess I just don't know what else to say when
Yeah.
I look at a frog and I see it jump in front of me and I say it's true. I don't know what else. I don't know what I'm saying there other than how I feel.
Well, all you were saying is how you feel, but that doesn't mean that there isn't an actual frog there. And maybe there isn't. I don't know. But there either is or isn't. And all you can say is your feelings. All you can ever experience is your feelings.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. They could be correct.
Hmm.
It's still just a feeling, but they could be correct. They could correspond to reality. So reality is beyond you. That's like a different
Hmm.
thing. You're a part of it, but it's different than your feelings. So
So,
what do you think about that?
um, Well, I think if you got a better hold on the language, you might see
Okay.
what I'm getting at because it is like it is very complicated. Just the way Gady thinks is really complicated. So like
Yeah,
what'll happen
I can tell.
what'll happen is that like I'll say something kind of crazy like knowledge is a synonym of belief, and I'll explain that, and
Mm.
then people have a bunch of objections, and then I'll have to say another crazy thing to fill in that.
Yeah.
So I'll have to say like so it's a whole system, and I remember there was this guy named Planer Walk who's basically there's just this like skeptic, you know, kraut type,
Mm.
retard, and he made a video.
Okay,
He
that
made a
kind of
video
guy.
trashing Gady, and the reason why he made this video trashing him is just because he didn't spend like very much time with his ideas. It's he like it took me a long time to even get it, like what he was talking about. Like I remember when he would talk about how experiments are not a part of science. I thought it was retarded. I didn't think it was retarded, but I just didn't know what he was getting at. Like I didn't know what he meant when he said that like
Mm.
observations are not objective or like observations are not a part of science. Or
Mm.
another case is like where he says that a number is just a verb meaning to count, right? Um, so it's like
Mm.
so he has a
Interesting.
very strange way of looking at things, and it's all working backwards from the idea that like light is a rope, like and all this matter is mediated by objects. So it's a completely different. So it's the language you're familiar with, but just like completely like defined differently. Um, so like he has
Okay.
uh like 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 motion is like um what's the different? It's two or more locations of an object. Location is the set of distances between an object and all other objects. Um,
Okay.
like with a line, like defining what a line is, he would just say it's just a shape. So he would not he wouldn't say it's like some vector that's going off into infinity. He would say it's just like a square, and
Mm.
then that other thing is just some sort of concept. Um, where like the mathematician's like drawing a dot, like that sort of like moves
Mm.
across the screen. So he's talking. So the person is actually talking about motion, right? Um,
Okay. I see.
so like there's it takes a long time to get, I guess. So um,
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like that's something I'll have to spend a lot of time
yeah,
on. But I do want to learn about it. It seems like it does seem like he knows something. So
yeah. But
it would be interesting to
how
know.
did you get interested in like all this like esoteric like far right stuff?
Um, I think it was when I was like 15. I was like really young, and I was just kind of on the internet, and there was some guy was in like some Discord server, and he was saying something like I don't even remember what he was talking about, but he was saying something that would be considered extreme by normies, and he's saying that he's like a fascist or
Hmm.
something. And so I asked him like what even is fascism? Like I don't even know how do you define that? And I don't even remember how he defined it, but he defined it in a way that it was like, yeah, that seems like that's pretty
Yeah.
rational. It seems like that's a I, like I wouldn't think of myself that way today, but that's kind of I think that's where it started. I was like, yeah, that seems like that's rational. And so I read some books about it, and it's like, yeah, yeah, this seems like this is correct. And then I learned, I think I just learned more about, I just kind of moved on since that point. I don't, I think at that point was a point where I hadn't questioned statism
See.
or, and I didn't know anything about like
Are
religions.
you I'm
And
sorry.
I was never religious, but, oh, sorry. Yeah, I never really believed in any religions besides statism. Which I think is like the oldest religion is like really, really ingrained in
Mhm.
people. Um, It's like it's like a Christianity that's existed for like 5,000 years, and it's like, well, this is really ingrained. But it's nonetheless, I think it's the same as Christianity. It's all of the justifications
Yeah.
for statism do rely on some kind of magic. There's not like a realistic justification
Mhm.
for it. So I've never heard any arguments for it that make
So,
sense.
I'm
So
sorry. I keep
once I
interrupting
oh
you.
you can ask your question. No, that's
So,
like you
like,
can
are you
ask.
familiar
I've
with
talked a lot.
like Ryan Falk's old videos on like anti-statism and like anarchism?
Yeah, I've watched all of those videos. I don't really care about economics, but he does make good arguments for anti-statism.
Hmm.
So so yeah, I think those some of those are arguments that I still use, but those were not convincing arguments to me because I already believed uh, that the state is an unjust thing. But I do think his arguments are pretty
So,
good.
like, would you consider yourself to be an anarchist?
Well, I'll have to again. I'll take this is something I learned from Ryan Falk. I wouldn't use the word anarchism. I just say
Yeah, yeah.
anti-statism. I think that's because the word anarchist is like it's like, oh my God, what do you even mean
Hmm.
by that? You have people who be like, oh, anarchism is when like the state controls everything, and then you have it's just like, oh my God, what does that even mean? Does anarchism mean no rules? Because I'm not against rules. I'm against like a law, like a centralized law that you have to follow and you can't opt out of. So, I like you could build a society where you had like 110% tax rate and you publicly stoned all people who drink alcohol or something. And I don't give a shit because as long as I can opt out of that and make my own society somewhere else, then you can do that in your own society. I don't
Hmm.
care. So I don't as long as you don't force this kind of craziness on me, then I don't care. So I'm not against rules. I'm not against like death penalty or whatever. That's all fine. It's just I think people would just naturally come to conclusions about what you should use it for. That's what people did in the
Hmm.
past. You know, people were killing each other long before for killing each other for transgressing on things long before law. So I don't think obviously rules are not descended from statism. Laws are like this kind of this law that like this centralized agency creates, and it's just not justifiable. I think ultimately statism is just an unjustifiable
Hmm.
position. I've just never heard a good argument for it because all the arguments for statism, especially on the conservative end of the political talking points, you'll see like, oh, well, we need the state because people can't control themselves, as like a typical like I guess like a fascist justification for the state. They'll say like, oh, we need the state because otherwise people will just like drink soda all day and they'll be
Yeah, that's
fat
not true.
losers.
I mean, like,
It is
I mean,
yeah, it's just not the
societies have
case. First of
there
all,
have been societies that have operated without governments. I mean, like,
mhm,
it's possible. It's just the only problem. Here's why I moved away from anarchism because I was an anarchist for a little while. Um, it's not that I
mhm,
don't think it's a bad idea at all. It's just that I don't think that I think that what would happen is that if you got rid of the state, just like some other like actor would come in and just like take over your land and just do the same thing because states are powerful. States are monopolies of on violence, and violence is um, just going to be there and just going to control people. And so, like, if you
yeah,
like, I think the only places where you can do that is like if a state allows you to have your own thing and just leaves you alone, or like you're in a country that nobody fucks with and has no valuable resources. So like if you're in Africa, like who's gonna like fuck with you in Africa? Like nobody's going to do that. So like if you were to
yeah,
do um
I
Yeah.
think in a low population zone,
Maybe
it's
somewhere in Russia you
pretty
could
safe.
like maybe do that, but
You could definitely have it in Alaska
yeah,
too.
but it's always got to be granted by a
So,
state. It's always got to be like granted by other people, like because other people are exploitative and make
well,
monopolies and
well, it also goes the other way in that people also grant the state.
yeah, they also grant the state legitimacy.
So but it goes both ways. It's not a
Yeah.
one-way thing. What I would say about that is in the modern world, that's definitely true because you have high population zones, and they can create a state. The high population zones is like cities. They can create a state. If you're in a low population zone, like one person per square mile, which is like the historical European population through most of our history, you're just not going to get a state. It just can't happen. It's too low of a population,
Yes.
um, especially without civilization.
Well,
There's just no
maybe in
chance.
a
Just
an
can't
age
happen.
where there's declining birth rates, maybe in a lot of these countries are thinning out.
Yeah, I think it. I think
Maybe
yeah.
there's a chance.
I don't think. Yeah, I think. I don't think statism is going to go away when these kinds of civilization collapses happen. I think it's just going to become centralized to like cities. And I think cities are going to be really low population. They're like a city might only have a few thousand
Hmm.
people in it, or like a few hundred people. A city might be like 500 people, and you go outside the city, and it's just kind of nobody. There might be just like a few nomadic tribes, or people outside, and they'll trade with the city, but that's about it. You that city isn't going to be able to enforce laws on anyone outside of the city. So some cities will probably form without any state, and a lot of cities will probably keep the state. But I think most cities are just going to be centralized on ports and trading zones. Like maybe you'll have a city inland where there's like a gold mine or something, or you're mining like tin or like some other valuable resource or like mercury, and then you're like trading it downriver to the
Hmm.
ocean ports. But I think that's kind of how I think the world. Maybe not, definitely not in my lifetime, but maybe in the next few hundred years, 500 years or 1,000 years from now, that might be kind of what the world
Yeah,
looks like.
but you could also do it in
So
secret. Like I think Jim Jones did that.
yeah, you can. Yeah, you can do it in secret, and still there are places where you can do that in secret. You can have places in Alaska, Russia, northern Canada, like that strip of land. That's a really low
Hmm.
population zone. So
You'd have to start some sort of cult
you
though.
definitely could do it there.
Otherwise, people might not want to do it.
Uh, well, not. I don't think so. I think you could do it with wild people without a cult. Only if only that's only going to happen though if the conditions become so undesirable in civilization that there would be enough people who would
Hmm.
want to do that. So
Are you familiar with
it would have to get really bad.
Orania in South Africa?
Yes, I do know
That's a
about
really
Armenia.
fascinating.
I don't think we should be living yeah, I don't think we should be living in
No,
Africa
no,
at all.
terrible
Maybe
idea.
it's like it's a yeah, I don't know why they ever went down there. That was
Short term thinking.
definitely a mistake.
That's why.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, I recommend if you live in South Africa to not live in
No.
South Africa. That's like really, really bad idea. So you should probably move to a low population zone that has a forest and live there. That's probably a good. That's probably a much
Hmm.
better idea.
Yeah, that sounds like an
Um,
idyllic kind of life. And
mm. I
you've inspired me with your quail farming. Maybe that
oh, thank
I
you,
might
thank
want to
you.
do that myself. Homestead.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. It's not too hard to figure out anything. It's not a lot of work, and it's tons of free food. So
Yeah.
it's like really, really awesome. I'm gonna grow like at least a couple hundred pounds of potatoes
Yeah.
this year. Like at least 200. And it's like, oh my God, dude. The amount of effort, the amount of hours I put into that many potatoes is like nothing. It's like probably like maybe 10, 15 hours total of work. Like, oh my God. That's amazing. So, yeah, it's definitely productive. One thing I wanted to say about statism, I forgot. Um, you'll see that like the during the Roman era, you'll see like the northern Germanic tribes. By northern I mean north of Rome. They didn't have they didn't have statism. They didn't have taxes or laws. They just had traditions that are local to the
Mhm.
tribe. And they were able to in the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. They were able to defeat the Romans and kick them out. That's an example of like an anti-statist group winning over the statist group. But here's the reason why that happened. That only was able to happen because those people were really wild.
Yeah.
The northern German people, they're really wild, and they're really cutthroat. And what happens is that here's something you'll see about things is that some conservatives are really not cutthroat, and it's especially peasants. You see, a lot of peasants are really not cutthroat. There will be those are the kind of people who'll be like, "Oh, I'm conservative. You know, you got wait at least until my kid is 12 before you can cut his penis off and pretend it's a
Mhm.
girl." Like those
Yeah.
kinds of guys. Gay marriage is a good thing as long it's like like they can come here as long as they come here legally. Those kinds of people. Those are really not cutthroat people, and so they just get walked on by the
Hmm.
religionists. So they get really screwed over, and they cause us to get screwed over because they put up with it.
Yeah, those are probably
So
people. Those
if
are
you
probably
had
people who survived the wars.
yeah, yeah, because they would just put up with it. They would just put up with any kind of cult behavior. They don't really care. But if your group is really cutthroat, um, then you could. What would happen if you're like really cutthroat? For example, the American revolutionaries. That was like a conservative revolution against the British in the 1700s, and they were like really, really cutthroat. When the British like raised the taxes like very slightly, they
Hmm.
just killed them, and like that's like a productive conservative mindset. If you had a group like that, you could really get a lot done. You could be
You know
pretty
what it was?
independent
Those
from
people were all
statism
liberals.
even today.
Yeah.
Well, ideologically, well, at the bottom, no. At the bottom, they don't have any ideology at the bottom. They just
Well, it was
fighting because they don't want to
they.
pay taxes. At the top, maybe there's a
You
religion
should
going on at
read.
the top, but at the bottom,
You
people
should
didn't
read
care.
Sidney George Fisher's book, True History of the American Revolution. It's written by an American lawyer in the early 1900s, and
Okay.
basically the revolution did not go down the way that it's taught in social studies classes. It was
Oh, I'm
basically
sure
just
that's
a bunch
true.
of
Yeah.
liberal capitalist merchants who wanted to trade with Jamaica, and all of that oppression stuff was just not true. I mean, the British were very nice to them, and um, they basically it's kind of eerie because when you read some of the things that they did, like when they would destroy some guys like some governor's house that that contained lots of historical records, and they would like destroy that. It reminded me so
Mhm.
much of like BLM, like these kind of like mobs, like this kind of like mobbing. Um,
Yeah, I don't think it was a religious movement though. I think it was just conservatives. You like get really mad at the
mhm.
British. But I don't think, yeah, I'm sure that there was like shady stuff, and I'm sure there was like religions going on at the top. But people at the bottom, I promise you, they didn't care about any of that stuff. They just really wanted to not pay taxes, and they wanted to keep
Mhm.
their guns. So, and that's fine. That's like great. if you don't want to pay taxes and keep your guns. Those are really important things. But anyway, I think maybe that's not the best example of a anti-state revolution. The best, especially because it wasn't actually anti-state, but the best example is definitely the Germans
I
and the
see. I
Romans.
see.
So, so it definitely can happen, but it can only happen if there's a certain quality of people, which is like basically just autistic people who are like
Yeah.
really cutthroat about about keeping the way that they
Hmm.
want to live. So so it could happen. I think probably not going to see a revolution because those people don't exist in enough quantity. So that's never going to happen
Yeah.
until they do,
We're gonna
and
have to
that's going
make
to
a
be
lot of
like
babies.
hundreds of years from now. So oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll take hundreds of years, but I'm very happy though that the cultists have such a low fertility rate. I think the wokeism is like the greatest invention ever because it's like think of all the wokeists that are
Yeah.
just killing themselves and like not having children because of wokeism. It's like holy shit, these guys are just dying. Like you literally don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
They just kill themselves. It's like
You're the
it's
enemies
like
that
the
kill
greatest thing ever
themselves.
created. Yeah, yeah, it's like you're fighting an army and they're just killing themselves. It's like, oh my God, it's like the greatest thing ever. I've never seen
Yeah.
something so amazing. So I think wokeism is like one of the greatest inventions in human history. Because I think what's gonna happen is that because their fertility rate is so low and there's no chance that it's gonna go up, I don't think. I mean, what are the chances it goes up? I think near zero.
No.
Um, unless they adopt a new religion. But as long as they keep their religion, then they will
Yeah.
go extinct. And that's like, it's like, oh my God, these guys are finally dead. After like 5,000 years, they just kill themselves. They just kill themselves because they're like
Yeah.
cutting off their penises.
I just hope that they don't do too much
Um,
damage while they're still alive.
I don't think they can. I mean, they're just so weak compared to the past cults. I mean, I'm sure they do damage, but it's like it's so marginal compared to the past cults will just like line conservatives up and
Yeah.
just execute them. So it's these guys don't do that. They just like the worst they're gonna do is like dox you or something. They're not
No.
gonna kill you or whatever. So I'm pretty happy about it because guess what? They conned themselves into being
Yeah.
anti-gun, and
Yeah.
so it's like they disarmed themselves. Like oh my God, this is an unbelievable victory for us. I've never seen anything like this happen
Yeah.
before. It's
They're just
amazing. So I'm
they're egg
very thankful for that.
smashers. It's the best description of they're egg
Yeah.
smashers. They're polluters. They make racial
Yeah.
pollution.
Yeah,
It's
they're
yucky.
yucky. That's what they are. They're yucky. They look yucky and they act
Yeah.
yucky. And you just can't
No.
live with them.
Well,
Yeah.
it's it's almost 4 a.m. and my dad is gonna wake up
Uh-oh.
soon. So I think
All right, you
yeah.
better go to bed
So
then.
this was a really awesome
Okay.
talk. We'll definitely have you on again.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
you guys in the comments, if you guys have a question, just leave a comment or send me an email. I will put my email in the description, and I will read it. We don't do super chats, so yeah. So thank you guys very much. Threcast out.